Greetings, my friends. Welcome to the next episode of the Mint Mob Podcast. Jason here, joined by my buddy Alex, as always, across the pond in Germany. We're going to dive into the usual stuff and talk art, markets, and where the world is going with all things crypto. But before we do, let's jump in with Alex and see how he is, man. What's going on, brother? How are you?
Hey man, I'm great. Happy to be back on Mint Mob Podcast. Always great to be here. Always great to take a look at the markets, even though it's not very exciting right now. Not too much movement happening. Um, I feel like the news when you look at the news, they are rather like not good. Obviously, we see another dispute between Elon and Donald again. And this has usually caused, or at least like the last time it happened, caused markets to dump. But it feel like markets do not really care anymore. Elon is planning to create an America party. Donald responded in a tweet and said that it's useless and it's just because of the Big Beautiful Bill Act, and that Elon is mad because of the EV mandate and blah 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 blah. Like two children basically arguing, but for some reasons markets became resistant to all this, and it's interesting. Like it's interesting to see how markets react to this, even though market movements are not very big this time. But I feel like a lot of consolidation, and I would say I'm ready for the next leg up, because I think Bitcoin went up to 109 or even 110. I'm not sure, like within the last week. And yeah, like I said, we see a lot of people still buying. We see a lot of big players come into the space and keep buying Bitcoin. And I mean, do you remember the news we had last Friday when suddenly Satoshi era wallets woke up and moved like huge amounts of Bitcoin? And now it actually looks like that might have been an OTC deal, or they were just transferred for security reasons. So a lot of noise for nothing. But yeah, it's still interesting to follow the news. What do you think about the markets?
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin did hit 110.5, I think it was this past week, which was really cool. I think Bitcoin hits 150 to 200 this year. That's kind of my price target, and I don't think the bull run is over for Bitcoin at all, especially with what's happening. So, I mean, as far as the markets are concerned, they're going to respond to, short-term, like news cycle type stuff. They always do. It doesn't really matter in the end. I mean, in the end, unless you're a trader, who cares? And I'm not a trader. And, so at the end of the day, I don't really follow it too closely. I'm just looking at if the story changes. That's all I really care about when it comes to the market. If the adoption story changes, then I get concerned and I start looking for, what might be moving that. But so far, the adoption story hasn't changed. The cycle, I think the Bitcoin cycle is still valid, but slowing down. And I don't think the altcoins will ever coincide with Bitcoin again, aside from just some euphoric moments. So I feel like the market is separating into quality versus lack thereof. Bitcoin, everyone is considering to be a quality alternative asset right now. And that's everybody from fund managers all the way down to, even a lot of the average people that I'm talking to now have at least heard of Bitcoin if they haven't already bought it. Some people have asked me how to buy it, but that's not true of altcoins. So altcoins is still very much, an early adopter game. So at the end of the day, you're going to see the quality assets continue to lead. Bitcoin's going to go higher for sure this year. You're going to see probably Solana run, maybe some ETH running. And depending on what happens with the hype around Sui, maybe a little bit of a Sui run. But, most of the other alts are going to struggle mightily because there's no real differentiation between any of them, at least nothing materially significant. So I don't really look for anything to happen there other than people are going to look for an exit point, and they're basically going to wait for a pop. They're going to sell, and they're going to, buy Bitcoin or Solana or ETH or something like that. So, from my perspective, I love when the markets move. You know this. I love volatility, and there hasn't been much. Like you said, it's been kind of boring. And so, boring markets to me, I'm just kind of watching. I'm just watching the story, and nothing changes. No news cycle stuff happens. No major catastrophes that moved markets happen. Then, it's just kind of blah. Who cares? So, adoption story, accumulate every dip you can, and then hopefully you get a big dip to accumulate some more. But aside from that, man, get out there, turn the screens off, and enjoy life. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. But you said that you don't think that the bull run is going to end very soon. But let's just break that down, because the terms bull run and obviously bear market, I as you know, I'm like I've never really been into stocks. I'm like a little stock virgin. I barely bought stocks in my life. Um, but obviously you also speak about bull runs and bear markets and stock markets as well. So way before crypto, when you speak about a bear market in like the traditional markets, like you do not expect such a big correction as people expect in crypto, right?
True. Yeah. You got to realize the whole point of the traditional markets is to eliminate volatility, because the average person totally freaks the fuck out when the market moves downward, especially in a big way. Even when it moves up, they tend to get nervous in a big way because it's a sign that something major is happening. So, the whole traditional markets setup is to be that of volatility elimination. That's its whole point, really. And when you have the vast majority of people who are on payroll, who contribute to some sort of retirement plan like a 401k or an IRA or something like that with a part of their paycheck, the last thing they want to see is a market move downward. And so basically all of the government entities, all of the sort of securities and exchange, police type people, their whole job really is to eliminate the guesswork around what could potentially happen with traditional markets. And that's why you see the there's the average 8% return that's always advertised on like the S&P 500 or index fund, something like that. And, at the end of the day, 8% is fine in a world where there's no inflation. But in a world where there's massive inflation, 8% isn't going to even keep you on par with your purchasing power from yesterday. So you really want to make sure that what you're investing in has the ability to keep pace with inflation and beat it. And that's the problem with the traditional markets. But unfortunately, the average person doesn't understand inflation or money printing or liquidity cycles or any of this stuff. And so they just, they go to a job, they get their paycheck, they've signed up to contribute to a 401k. Maybe their employer matches a percentage of what they put in their 401k. And that's the extent of their investing knowledge. They don't want to know anymore. They don't care to know anymore. And unless and until they get close to retirement, and then it matters. And all of a sudden they're wondering how much they have in their retirement account. So, when you look at it from the standpoint of it being a product designed to fill the needs of the masses, you always end up with like lowest common denominator thinking. And the lowest common denominator in terms of service provision to like a 401k client or customer is just simply to make sure that they feel safe. That's your whole job right there. They just need to feel safe, right? So in terms of investing in stocks, the average person never does.
Yeah, but so that does actually mean that a bear market, in the traditional markets, is not even such a such a bad thing, because obviously why crypto people are so strongly holding on to the idea that the bull market continues is because if the bull market ends, it usually results in entering the bear market, which usually causes altcoins and your coins to drop 60 to 80%. So this has never been a thing in stocks. So it's actually like I feel like it almost feels like bear and bull markets were kind of redefined in the crypto space, because the result is so much different to stock markets, if I'm correct. Because obviously there is a bull run in stocks, it does not necessarily mean that you make like 5x in a short period of time, right?
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, again, we're talking about the difference between, the stock market for different types of people. So if you're a trader or an investor, then you might make 5x because you know what you're doing, or you're double leveraged or triple leveraged or what have you. But at the end of the day, that's not what the average person experiences on the back end, right? I mean, the whole idea behind Wall Street and the 401k is basically to send more money to Wall Street so that money managers can make money. It has nothing to do really with supporting the little guy. But the size of volatility, or the amount of volatility that you see in the market, is, in my opinion, directly proportional to the size of the market, right? So if you look at the largest markets in the world, which are the currency markets, they don't move very much because, again, there's a ton of liquidity chasing every deal. And so when opportunity shows up, it gets snapped up immediately. And then you go to the bond market, which is bigger than the stock market. And then you have the stock market, right? And the larger the market, the less the volatility you're going to experience. You get to the crypto market, and we're talking like a very small percentage of quote unquote investors are involved in the crypto world. And so you do have things like bad news causing a massive price shock that'll send it up or down one way or the other, depending on, how you interpret the news. And these types of things are your opportunity as an investor. Just like if you were around in 2008 when the financial crisis happened. I mean, here in Phoenix, you could buy a property, like literally buy a property for $40,000. Like you could buy a house for 40 grand in the city. Now it wasn't a very nice house, but for 40 grand, you could buy it and fix it up and throw a tenant in there, and you could, create cash flow for the rest of your life. And now that property's worth 200 or 250,000, right? So those things do happen, but they're once in a blue moon. They're like, black swan events that if you have cash and you're smart and you're waiting on the side, that you take advantage of, right? So this is why you'll see in times of trouble, investors will tend to raise cash. They'll raise cash because they're waiting for something bad to happen, or they think something bad is going to happen. And they're going to deploy that cash into whatever the distressed asset class would be. Stocks, that happened, again, with the financial collapse, or the financial trouble that we saw in 2008, 2007, 2008, 2009. The market did, in fact, crash, but it wasn't, an 80% crash like you might find in a crypto token. It was like much, much less than that. It was a big double-digit move, but that was a massive move for that market because it doesn't normally move like that, right? And the same thing with like oil and commodities and all this other stuff, like you might have double-digit moves on bad news days for oil, for example. But at the end of the day, all of this stuff is temporary. And unless you are actively trading the market or actively looking for opportunities, meaning that you've got some cash stacked away on the sidelines looking for, like a negative sort of price shock to happen, it's not going to matter to you in the long run, right? Unless you're one of these people who's very close to retirement. Like if you retire the day the market crashes, and you see your 401k evaporate by 20% or 30%, that's going to cause you some serious distress if you needed that cash, right? So people forget that volatility is your friend when you are looking to expand, but it's your enemy when you're looking to ride it out. So for retirees, again, it's person dependent, it's situation dependent. Volatility is a wonderful thing if you're looking for opportunity and you're in expansion mode. But if you're in that I want to be safe and ride out my retirement mode, it's not a great thing. So again, it's all context dependent, and it also depends on what your goals are for that particular asset class, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously there have been a lot of people out there making tremendous amounts of money with stocks. And yeah, you said it, like obviously people can also, trade with leverage in stock markets as well. I think CFDs or something. But I kind of forget that there were a lot of, bad days for, stock markets. For example, like, when was that, how was it called? Black Monday in the 80s, right?
Or I think, let's see, there's been a couple Black Tuesday, Black Monday. Let's see.
the one that was mentioned in Wolf of Wall Street, like when Jordan lost his job because of some sort of Black Monday. I think it was, let's see, 1987.
That was 87.
And I never really, like, when I watched the movie, I was like, okay, what the fuck did just happen? That investor center needs to close now and he loses his job. Like, what can happen to the stock markets? And I never really got it. Like, maybe you can summarize it. But as I said, a lot of people obviously lost their money. Then we got the Lehman Brothers thing in 2008. And it obviously shows that you cannot only lose money in crypto, but in stocks as well.
Okay, well, I mean, just you could look at Black Monday from 87, right? You can pull up a chart and you can see that the Dow Jones was at about 2,700, and it dropped to around 1,900. It went as low as like 17 for like a split second, but basically hovered around 1,900 for a few days that month, which was, I think it was that fall that year. And so, I mean, look at that move. That move was from, a peak of 2,700 to a trough of, call it 1,800, right? Well, half of 2,700 is what, 13 and a half, right?
Yep.
It never even got close to 50%, right? The Dow Jones didn't even drop 50%, right? I mean, 50% move in crypto is normal, basically, especially for these super volatile alts, right? So, like, I mean, this was like this was like a couple days where the move was like 40%. And then by the start of the next year, a couple months later, it was already back up over 1,900 and then back into the 2000s. And, so I mean, it was very temporary sort of a thing. But again, like if you didn't have cash on the side and you were leveraged and you had investments that were infected, with this contagion, then you were fucked. But that's always true. Like it's just like with, the mortgage crisis in 2007 and 8 that happened basically globally. If you were over leveraged, if you had borrowed too much money and you didn't have enough income to service the debt, when those home prices dropped and you couldn't sell those houses to get out of them, you're fucked. But if you're just the average person who sat on a conventional mortgage that had a fixed rate, a fixed interest rate, and you kept your job, it didn't do anything to you. It had literally no impact on you whatsoever, right? So again, all of these things are context dependent on how you're positioned. And when you had, like in Black Mondays, another banking crisis, when you had the tech bubble in 2000-ish, and then you had the housing bubble in 2007, 8, 9, whatever that was. Like, when 2008 hit, I had cash sitting on the side, right? And I was looking for opportunity then. And I had a fixed rate mortgage. At the time I was living in a condo, and I had it paid for, and I actually went and borrowed money against my condo to raise cash to buy more assets, right? So for me, it was the best thing that could have possibly ever happened because mortgage rates came way down. I had a property that was paid for, meaning I had cash or I had some liquidity available on the side, right? Home prices crashed 75, 80% in some areas, at least temporarily. You could get properties for 40 grand, like I said, in Phoenix. And then we ended up buying a property in Phoenix for $48,000. I think it was in 2012, And today that property's worth $200,000. So, I mean, again, I was not impacted at all by the financial crisis. I was actually helped by it. So I guess you could say I was impacted in a positive way because I had equity and liquidity sitting on the side that I could leverage to buy distressed assets. And that's what smart people do. So you never want to be in a position where you are forced to sell. We talk about being a forced seller. When the stock market crashes or, the tech bubble explodes or, Black Monday or Black Tuesday from the 29 crash, like whatever you want to call it, if you're over levered and you don't have liquidity to survive that temporary shock, you're fucked. But if you have plenty of liquidity, you don't care. You're just actually like, this is fantastic. I'm looking for opportunity. Show me where, I can buy a property for 20 cents on the dollar or buy a stock for 30 cents on the dollar. Like, show me where I can do that because I want to put my money to work. Those are the things that you dream about as an investor.
Yeah, that's what I just wanted to say. I mean, isn't it funny that if you look at these kind of things, whenever you have like a sharp correction or dump or whatever, it's actually such a great opportunity to make money. Even if you look at the recent, you can't even call it crash, but when Bitcoin went from its former all-time high all the way down to 74. If you look at these kind of charts, you always see that they usually recover, especially when the fundamentals have not changed. And it's actually such a great way to make money, and such a sure shot actually. And people, when these kind of things happen, all you see is people complaining, even though they actually get the opportunity to print money. And it's funny because people are so, I don't know, so dumb sometimes. And they just look at their bags and they are like, oh, I'm losing money because the chart goes down. And the asset they bought for 100K, that went up to 110, is suddenly not a good asset anymore when it's being sold for 80 or 75 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. I feel like to some degree you need these kind of people to make money on your own, because if everyone would make good decisions, it would be like you need people that make bad decisions, obviously, in a market, because that's how the bull run works. That's when when retail comes in and everyone throws money into a coin or a stock, and it goes up, and smart money leaves, obviously, and takes profits, while the others will have to watch their money go away after their investment. And yeah, man, it's actually like, it could be so easy. It's actually, if I just looked at the Black Monday chart as well that you just described, when it went down from 2,700 all the way down to 1,800, and then it recovered, and it looks like the pattern repeats all the time. And like I said, it could be so easy, and I don't know why people don't get it.
Yeah, and that was like a 25% move or something like that. I mean, again, like if you're the average person and you have been smart with your finances, like you're not over leveraged, you don't have crazy amounts of debt, you've got some savings on the side, you've got enough cash to get you through a few months of a problem, then like Black Monday was an opportunity for you to deploy cash into something that was going to come back quickly. Like these supply shocks or these price shocks due to news, or in this case, this was a quote unquote global crash worldwide or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And, like the truth is, like, if you were an average person who was looking for opportunity, this was a good opportunity to purchase stocks at a tremendous discount, because like, look at, the Dow was at, you said like it went up to 2,700. What is it at today? Today it's at like what, 40 something thousand. I haven't even looked at the stock markets in forever. Let me see. What is the Dow Jones at today? It's at some crazy number. What is it at? 44,200. Okay. So let's say you bought an index fund that tracked the Dow for, even at 2,000. Or, or even if you held through when it went from 2,700 down to 1,800, like, do you give a shit today that it dropped 25%? No, you don't care at all. But again, that would be you owning an index fund that tracked the market. Now, if you were an individual stock picker and you picked the wrong stocks, then you're fucked, or if you leveraged yourself and borrowed money to buy stocks that you couldn't afford, or at least afford to fund if they had a bad day, you're fucked. This is why Warren Buffett talks about leverage so negatively. He grew up in a world where the dollar was worth something until it wasn't worth something, or maybe it's Charlie Munger, his business partner that died a little while back. He said that, basically the crux of it is like if you're smart, you don't need to leverage your money, right? And if you're not, you really don't need to leverage your money, you know? And that's kind of true, right? Like if you're smart, you don't need it. And if you're an idiot, you really don't need to borrow money. So like, you know, people forget that interest rates, you know, can work for you or against you. And a lot of times when you borrow money, if you're not smart about how you do it, then you can get in trouble really, really quickly. And a lot of these people who quote unquote get killed on Wall Street, you'll find that when you look at their portfolios, they were holding like really crazy stuff, like a double levered stock or a triple levered stock, or they were buying on margin, which means they borrowed money from a broker to buy stock, you know, with the hope that the stock was going to go up, and then they would sell the stock, pocket the profit, and then repay the principal back to the broker. Like, these are really risky plays unless you know what you're doing, you know? So a lot of times when they're talking about these people who got killed in Wall Street, it wasn't the average guy who had a normal mortgage and kept his job. It was the trader who was doing stupid shit that caused his entire firm to lose their portfolio and their fucking liquidity. And now all of a sudden 400 people lost their job because some dickhead made a bad decision and triple levered their portfolio. You know, like, this is the type of stuff that kills a business.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the guys holding Ripple today, I think.
Yeah, don't even get me started.
Yeah, man, too funny. But yeah, I mean, did we get news from Powell? I haven't heard from him lately. Like, did he give us some hints on, you know, cutting interest rates?
I haven't heard anything from Powell other than I mentioned on Spaces, you know, Trump's note to Powell. So I don't know if he responded, but that would be pretty funny. Let's see. I'm just going to pull it up right now. Let's see if he did anything to Powell. I'm curious. Jerome Powell. Let's see. I mean, the problem with the Fed is, like, people think the Federal Reserve is a government entity, and it isn't. You know, it's a private bank. It's part of the private banking cartel. And this is the thing that Robert Kiyosaki's been trying to teach people forever. And before him, you know, Edward Griffin, when he wrote Creature from Jekyll Island, was trying to teach people about the Fed as well. The Fed doesn't answer to the government. It's its own entity, unaccountable and separate from the government. And so anything that Trump asks him to do is literally an ask. Like, he can't force him to do anything, right? And because Powell doesn't like Trump, I can't really see him complying with his request, even if it hurts people, because again, ego is just the one thing that human beings cannot get over. You just can't get over it, right? So I don't know. We'll see what the Fed's going to do, but they haven't really signaled any significant rate drops as of yet. Let's see when the next Fed meeting. Next Fed meeting should be coming up soon. They meet every 6 weeks.
End of July, right?
Yeah, July 29th.
Yeah.
So we'll know something by the end of this month as to whether or not they're going to do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I bookmarked a tweet that oh, bless you, man. I think I bookmarked a tweet from someone talking about the Fed that was pretty interesting, but let's see if I can find it. I don't think I can. It looks like I haven't bookmarked it. Let's see. Oh wow, here's a tweet on like obesity rates in the United States. Damn, man, you got 70% of overweight people in your country?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's not just our country, it's North America. It's pretty much all of the established Western nations have problems with obesity. But in the US, it's really bad. It's something like, last time I looked, there was something like 30 to 40% of people were considered obese, and another 20 to 25% were considered, overweight. So I think the cutoff is like 30% body fat. And it was kind of funny. I was listening to a podcast with Chris Williamson on Joe Rogan. He was talking about this, and they were talking about the average rates of obesity. And basically what he was saying was the average American is fatter than the average American pig, which is absolutely horrible, you know? And, yeah, it's a really bad thing for sure.
Oh, wow. And yeah, it says 42% of US adults are obese. That's actually crazy. Japan is 4%. Man, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm. It is absolutely crazy. I mean,
Wow.
the habits that Americans have around food are terrible, man. I mean, it's just absolutely terrible. And, you know, just eating real food solves most of your problems. But, you know, there's here in the U.S., like you can't throw a rock and not hit a fast food restaurant or a convenience store that sells junk food. They're on every street corner, you know. And so the average person is not going to take, the average person who's like stressed out, who's, you know, working a job, who has a family to support or is, you know, short of time, they're not going to come home and grab food out of the refrigerator and cook a home cooked meal unless it's on rare occasion, just because they're tired and they don't have the energy for that, right? So the easiest thing for them to do is to order food or to buy food at a convenience store or a fast food restaurant. And of course, that's low quality food. And then of course, when you add in the fact that very few adults move very often when they get older, I think something like 90+% of people after they get out of college will never again run a sprint in their lives, ever. Right? So like you're talking about people who never run again, or at least run fast again, you know, from the time they're in their early 20s until they die. That's just crazy. You know, like you can't eat shitty food and then not move and expect to have good health outcomes, right? So it's kind of cool that Kennedy's pushing for a lot of the food to be cleaned up and, you know, a lot for quality standards to be raised. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get that it's like very tempting, especially in the United States, because when I went there, I felt like, okay, like you can get burgers everywhere here. Like wherever you go, there is like a fast food restaurant, as you said, and you know, you get quick food. It's usually tasty, but you know, after like a week or so, I felt like, you know, like give me an apple or something. Like I felt sick. I felt terrible because of all the shit I ate over there, and I don't get how people can live like this forever, because I don't know, man. I you know, when I walked at the how was it called, like that beach in LA, Muscle Beach, is that possible, at the Gold's Gym?
Yeah,
It's
Muscle
like
Beach.
when I saw these people there were like so many, like, you know, obviously people in great shape and, you know, working out. And this was actually like the first stop I had when I was in Los Angeles. I went to Santa Monica Pier, and then I saw Muscle Beach, and I was like, dude, all these people here are like so fit, and everyone is like working out. And you know, once you get deeper into the country and you see people, the average like person, you see that it's like a lot worse, and it's not, you know, the usual thing for people to work out and, you know, watch their calories.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. Somebody posted a photo. It was like a beach photograph, you know, and it showed like a bunch of people on the beach. There's a bunch of chicks in the foreground wearing bikinis, and then like you could see people all in the background, like dudes and chicks all in the background. And none of them were overweight. And this was taken in, I think, probably the early 80s. And, you know, the caption read something like, "Is this really what it was like in the 80s?" And then, of course, there's a billion comments, and they're like, "Yep, exactly. You know, we actually went outside and got exercise, and we didn't overeat, and, you know, all this kind of stuff, you know." And that's true. Like, I mean, when I was a kid, I mean, in the summertime, my mom would literally lock us out of the house. She'd like, "Get the fuck out of here. I don't want to see you. Disappear. You know, if you're thirsty, drink from the garden hose, and don't come home, you know, until dinner time or something," right? Like that would literally happen. So we'd just be out riding bikes, walking, you know, we'd probably do 8 or 10 miles, you know, on bikes or by foot in the course of a day, just going from house to house, like seeing people. And sometimes I remember like my best friend was like a mile and a half away in the neighborhood. And I would remember like either taking my skateboard or my bicycle over to his house just to see if he was there, right? I wouldn't call first. right? I would just go and see if he was there. And then like, you know, half the time he wasn't even at home. So I would do that whole distance for no reason and then have to do the whole distance back, right? This is just stuff that never happens anymore, you know? And then when you couple the fact that you have an inactive population with just like monumentally, you know, incredibly easy access to shitty food, man, it's just a recipe for, you know, really bad health outcomes. So, I mean, it's good to see that, you know, that this is being addressed with what Kennedy's doing. I think it's a huge, positive thing in the world, you know, getting some of the trash out of the food. But I mean, we still have to get people to move, right? Like you still have to get people moving and taking care of their bodies. And, you know, you can't AI your workout. I mean, you have to get your fat ass off the couch and go work out. Like you can't AI that, you know, you can't AI your fucking push-ups. You got to get up and do them, you know, and people forget this. And it's so funny to see like parents today will just allow their kids to sit around the house and do nothing all day long. You know, it just didn't happen when I was growing up, you know?
Yeah, I totally get that. But I wonder, like, don't you think one day there will be some sort of magical purple pill
No.
that, you know, no, don't you think that?
No.
Because you think that that government wants you to stay fat and sick, right?
Well, I mean, if that's a different question. But I mean, government doesn't want to solve problems. You have to realize this. Government exists because problems exist. If problems go away, then you can't justify taxing people and creating a government, right? So government has no incentive to solve problems. That's a separate issue. But like in terms of like people taking care of themselves with a pill, I mean, we have Ozempic right now, which is a huge, huge thing. A lot of people are on these Ozempic shots and, you know, they're expensive and they create good outcomes because they basically take your appetite away and a lot of people are losing weight. But just because you're losing weight, that doesn't mean that you're healthy, right? Like you can be skinny and still be completely out of shape with no muscle mass, with, you know, like shitty bone density. You know, in order to take care of yourself, you know, you've got to do hard things. And this is both mentally and physically. You have to do hard mental things. You have to do hard physical things. And usually when you're doing hard physical things, it incorporates hard mental things because you don't want to do it in the first place. So you've got to overcome that obstacle, right? And so taking yourself on physically is never going to be replaced by a pill. It's not going to happen. You cannot create the outcomes that you need to create both physically and mentally by taking a pill. Because what you're telling your body, what you're telling yourself is that you physically, as a person, don't have the capability of taking care of yourself. Therefore, the answer is outside of me. And now you're getting into a world where all of your problems are caused by something outside of you. You know, and we have a group of people who live that way, where they're always a victim, right? There's a group of people who are always victims of what's happening outside of them. They're never responsible for their outcomes. They're never responsible for how they show up in the world. And these are not people that you place any sort of trust in or view as having character or having integrity, because they don't have self-control. So there's more to it than just weight loss. There's more to it than just looking fit. There's a mental component, and there's a component where you feel good about yourself because you're doing something positive. Like you are actively participating in your success. And this is why like UBI is a problem. I mean, not to go on all these topics, but like, let's say we have universal basic income for the world and all your basic needs are met. Okay, great. Okay, now everybody's basic needs are met. Now what? Okay, well, the average person, or at least the average person with a lot of male in them, we'll call them men, but even women with, you know, like male tendencies want to be accomplished in the world. So like you're still going to want to go into the world and have the knowledge of knowing that you're capable and that you can produce and that you feel good about your production, that you've created something that you can contribute to, something bigger than yourself. I mean, that's really what work is about. Like you're contributing to your family, you're contributing to your future, you're contributing to your community, right? You're serving people, you know? And so it's not just about being taken care of. And I mean, there's a whole lot of psychology that goes into this, but we can't just give people pills or give people money and expect to have healthy people. it will never happen. We have to have a balance of feeling good about our contribution in the world, or else we end up in that place where, it's all darkness and nothing matters, and, it's sort of nihilistic all the time. And, now everyone's wearing black makeup and dyeing their hair solid black, and, we're living in a dystopian future. So like, it's just crazy that people would think that something like a pill or something like money is going to solve the way that you feel about yourself. It doesn't. You have to contribute. You have to give. You have to be a producer to feel good about yourself. And this is the real danger about people sitting alone at home. It has nothing to do with like their activity level so much as their contribution and how they feel about themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that. I mean, but just in terms of obesity, I mean, there might be the possibility one day to, I don't know, to influence your metabolism in such a way that your body no longer stores fat. But I totally agree with what you said. I mean, if you look at people who are just thin and skinny, they never look healthy. I mean, look at drug addicts, for example. They never store fat, or they're usually very skinny and have other problems. But you need to have that, you need to get that mindset that you get, the discipline that you get when you work out and, take care of your nutrition and everything. I totally agree with that. So I don't know, how did we get here anyway? Like, why are we always like getting away from our topics? But yeah. It's interesting. I think I stumbled up on a tweet here. That's the reason. But let's jump a little bit into the Goodfellas as well, as we have a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. And yeah, we already announced that we will have a reunion of the Sirens and the Goodfellas, and that we have Daria, aka Darius, as our new in-house artist who's working on the pieces. And yeah, we will announce it once we start the trade, once we start exchanging pieces. When we had a team meeting before that podcast recording, we talked about a time frame when people can expect the Sirens. And if I get you right, we can expect these Sirens to be exchanged in July, right?
Yeah, for sure. That shouldn't be a problem at all. I mean, we have most of the information. We've got to format it. We were talking earlier off mic about some of the data that needs to be formatted, but absolutely can get that rolling. Should be mid-month for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, we are preparing the Sirens. And when you no, not like we already announced on Spaces last time that on top of the reunion, we will also have another batch of 90 pieces that will be dropped along with the existing Sirens. And yeah, I feel like, do you feel like we're obligated to get to all the Stargaze holders and bring them to Solana? Or do you feel like, because I wondered whether these guys will be kind of pissed that we leave Stargaze. Obviously Stargaze is not existing anymore, but yeah, do you think we have some sort of obligation towards them?
Well, I mean, as a service provider and creator, we always have an obligation to the collectors. I mean, that's our primary obligation. I mean, aside from showing up every day and doing what we can to create, I mean, the next obligation on the line is to take care of people. So obviously we want to take care of people and, give everyone as much opportunity as possible to participate in the family reunion that's coming to Solana. And I mean, we don't have to get rid of the pieces on Stargaze. I mean, I don't think that we should. So everyone holding a Stargaze piece should just continue to hold the Stargaze piece. But we're going to offer up the opportunity for them to collect a Solana piece and to take part in that. And, so the genesis was there. We're just basically mirroring them over onto Solana. And we're going to offer those up to every collector who wants, to start building on Solana, because given the fact that Stargaze is going away, as a chain, as an individual chain, and basically becoming an application on Cosmos, that's not really a game we signed up to play. We signed up to play the Stargaze game and to grow on Stargaze, but Stargaze has other plans. And that makes sense for them. They weren't profitable the way that they were doing things, and as a business, they had to make a decision. So, I don't have any, ill will or animosity towards Stargaze. Love those guys, love those people, love the collectors. All we're basically doing is just giving the collectors another piece, basically. Like, here's another piece and another way to continue to grow with us. So I feel like it's an opportunity, and certainly we need to communicate that to every single holder so that they understand, hey, if you're holding, like 10 Sirens, you're going to get 10 Sirens on Solana.
Yeah, absolutely. But like, what I would have loved to do is to actually, maybe Brady, for example, to get someone from Stargaze on his space, because I felt like we never really had the chance to, talk to someone from Stargaze and discuss what's happening, because obviously they provided the chain and they had some spaces, obviously, so we could have participated. But I felt like, the communication could have been a little better, in my opinion, because we had so many people showing up in our spaces and who are like, okay, I have no idea what's going on Stargaze. And, given the fact that we actually met so many great people over there, and that, we felt very welcomed, and, the communication back then was very good. And it actually did a lot of things better than Solana at that point, especially like, community wise. And it's actually sad to see them go,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and this is the big challenge, right? Like, the thing that Stargaze was able to do, again, because they were a tiny little group of people. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, the Stargaze community is very, very small. The market cap is very, very small. So we had people like Brady who, would go out of his way to really help us and to really, devote time to, teaching us certain things and inviting us into, spaces and having conversations with us about, how things were going. When you get to the bigger chains like Solana or ETH, that's just not possible. There's too many participants. There's not, the Solana team, for example, or ETH team would spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and never have the ability to communicate with everyone they wanted to communicate with. So they have to do it through, messaging and through third-party help. And Stargaze was a little bit different. It was more personal, right? And that's something that I really appreciated. And that's something that I will absolutely miss. But by the same token, if the chain doesn't exist, and it can't exist because it's not profitable, then it doesn't make sense to try and build on something that is failing, right? And so at the end of the day, we know Solana has a really bright future. They keep adding on all kinds of utilities and business use cases. This past week, they just brought in tokenized stocks, which is freaking huge. And so we need to be there. We need to be where the growth is happening, and we need to participate in that. And so hopefully, everyone understands that. I'm sure that when logic is applied, if there are any hurt feelings, I hope there aren't, but if there are any hurt feelings and logic is applied, they will just understand it makes sense. Just like I understand that they have to shut down the chain because it wasn't profitable. Just makes sense.
Yeah, man. I mean, you mentioned reasons for Solana that were actually the reasons why we started on Solana, and back then. Obviously, we both believed in the future of Solana. But would you ever consider, dropping a collection on another chain if, some other chain showed up and offered a grant or something? Like how do you rate the experience we had?
I mean, the experience we had was good, I feel like. And like I said, I have nothing but positive things to say about the team. The team has always, been responsive and has taken time. I can't tell you how many times I reached out to Brady on a weekend, for example, and he was more than happy to actually help. Or I don't know if he was more than happy, but at least he did help, And, so we joke about that a little bit. And, he's a great guy. So, I don't want to lose those connections, of course. But by the same token, no pun intended, like that chain is going away, and there's nothing I can do about that. Those are decisions being made by other people. And, there's a lot of people upset on the Stargaze side of things by that fact, because a lot of people built applications specifically for Stargaze, and, they built utilities on Stargaze, and, all of that work and time and energy and effort and money that they put in is all just gone now, unless they poured it to another chain, which I'm guessing they probably will. But that's going to that's going to require more expense and more time and more delays, right? So, it's not just Stargaze who's impacted, it's everyone who believed in it, and I think they've done a good job communicating rather than just, signing some paperwork behind the scenes and taking a payday and selling the tech to the hub, and becoming an application. They've done a good job, and they've been transparent. They've done the right thing about saying, hey, this is what we want to do. We're open to discussion. You want to get everyone's opinion. Brady reached out to me and was like, hey, how how might this impact you, and all this kind of stuff. And, so I feel like they've done everything in their power to maintain their character and do good things even through this transition, right? And so for me, again, coming back to our collectors, it's like, what's best for our collector? We have an obligation to them. And, we're not taking away anyone's pieces on Stargaze. We're just not going to be building there anymore. And so, we're going to be building on the one chain that we know for sure has a future, and that's Solana. And if the opportunity comes to, put something together on another chain in the future that has a lot of promise and potential, I'm not saying I would never do that, but I'm saying it would be very difficult to take any core pieces, like not core technology, but core to our lore and core to our art, and then consider seriously building on another chain. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, that's like what I thought as well, because I wondered, if, for example, tomorrow Vitalik called me and said, hey man, I offer you a grant to drop a collection on ETH, and I called you and I asked you, hey Jason, what do you think about that offer? I wondered, what would you say? Because what made me think is, I remember when, the first time we mentioned, the Siren reunion, and we pitched the idea of bringing them to Solana. And I remember we were on Spaces, and everyone, Maria, Jilly, everyone was like, yeah, you guys belong to Solana. Every time I think about Goodfellas, I think about Solana. And this made me feel like, okay, we are Solana, we need to represent it. And I don't want us to be multi-chain, like DeGods did and whatever. Just, because there is no good reason, okay, there might be a grant, there might be $1,000 or whatever, but Solana is the best chain for NFTs, in my opinion, and it has the best performance and the brightest future. So there is not really a good reason, for us to expand or to drop a collection on another chain. Or do you think? Can you think of anything?
I mean, I can imagine a scenario where it would be a cool thing to do, like I said, but in terms of where we build long term, no, not at all. I mean, unless something happened to Solana, the database. I mean, again, blockchain is just a database. If something happened to the Solana technology to make it sort of obsolete and make it, such that it was duplicated and not really necessary, then yeah, of course you would want to consider, some sort of move. But the truth is, that's unlikely to happen anytime soon. So I'm not even considering that. But if, a new chain cropped up and they were like, hey, we want you to do a specific type of collection, I could see doing a collection that was unrelated to what we already do. I wouldn't want to take any energy away from what we have. But I certainly wouldn't want to, just shut down an opportunity if in fact it were legitimately a good opportunity. $1,000 is not a good opportunity. It would cost me $1,000 just to do part of the work. Forget the promo, forget, all of the setups, forget all the back and forths, forget all of the, conversations about what it should look like and this and that and the other thing. $1,000 won't even move the needle. So I wouldn't even consider it for $1,000. But if there were a legit
Yeah.
opportunity, where our holders could benefit, we could benefit, and everybody wins, then yeah, it would be worth considering. But I don't really see that happening in the near future. I don't really see more blockchains being a viable sort of technology in the future. I think less blockchains are going to be what we're seeing. We're going to see more and more failures, more and more teams run out of money, more and more failed attempts at whatever it is that they're building. And again, the market will consolidate around what quality looks like in that particular space and time. And right now, what quality looks like in crypto to me is Bitcoin is the asset of choice for wealth preservation. ETH is first mover, and they've got first mover advantage on coding tech and even some artwork because most of the first NFTs came from there. And then Solana is basically taking what ETH did, making it faster, easier to use, and applying it to business and investing, like I mentioned earlier, the tokenization of like real world stocks. So when that is sort of, when those technologies are sort of sucking up all of the air in the room, I mean, you would really have to come up with a stellar, brand new idea, something that would catch on, something that would steal fire from those three things. And I don't see that happening anytime soon, especially with, the AI integrations that are coming on board and all of the failed chains that are coming. I think everything outside of probably the top 10 just basically fails. And it probably won't look like, closing up shop. It'll probably just look like people fading away. Like it'll just fade away to nothing. And, it won't be like a hard stop. It'll just be like they'll gradually fade to black. But ultimately, this is just the way it is. I mean, we're going to consolidate around the top 2 or 3 things. There will be clear winners and losers, and there won't really ever be a need, I don't think, to add another quote unquote blockchain without the serious consideration that it's going to have to be extremely different, offer some sort of benefit that we've not seen, and be ubiquitously adopted the world over. And that's a huge ask, man.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Beautifully summarized, but yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially when you mentioned all the chains that will have a future. And when I look at all these coins out there, claiming that they do something significant as well, and you see you'll see them go away so quick, and you will see so many people lose money and complain about that. It's crazy. Before we come to an end here, another thing I definitely need to mention is our drop on July 21st. Julie is going to have her piece Audacious dropped in our artist incubator, and I'm still trying to get her on our spaces as well, but unfortunately she's a little shy and she doesn't really feel comfortable to speak. If she won't do that, obviously that's perfectly fine, and I'll try to get as many information or as much information, much information as possible to describe the piece, and obviously get all the information about what inspires her to create art, how she became an artist, and all the usual stuff we ask artists in our program. So definitely looking forward to this, and I think we covered all the most important topics for today. Did I forget anything?
I don't think so. We definitely want to push this piece out and promote it.
Absolutely,
It's
yeah.
super cool piece, yeah. So yeah, we got sidetracked on a bunch of different stuff, kind of like we talked about air conditioning last time. But it's just the way it goes. But yeah, I mean, this is a beautiful, beautiful piece. I'm stoked to bring it to life. Can't wait.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, that sometimes happens, but I feel like you need some stories, out of the real life, definitely. And for me, it's like a crazy. It's like a unusual situation because I'm home alone. Actually, my wife is well, that's not my wife yet, but my fiance is on vacation, and yeah, it's like I feel lonely, so I need someone to talk.
You feel lonely, huh? How long has she been gone?
Yeah, it's only for like she been gone for like a couple days, and she'll be back by Wednesday. But it's like, when you're never alone, it feels weird to be alone actually, and you're completely alone at home, and that's how Kevin probably felt in Home Alone. I'm just waiting for I'm just like every day I'm waiting for Joe Pesci to break into my house, but nothing happens, unfortunately.
Too funny. Yeah, dude, I love it when
Yeah.
I love it when the house is empty. That's one of my favorite times, bro. You should enjoy it, especially being in Europe, man. There's so many people everywhere you go. Just enjoy it.
Dude, like I do shit. Like it looks like shit in here. Like nobody's cleaning stuff here. I'm ordering food every fucking day. Like, speaking about junk food, it's terrible, man.
Well, you know how to fix that. Pick up the house,
Yeah.
eat some real food, you know, pretend you need to take care of things for a change, you'll be all right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, that's like the child living inside myself, like living, when you're young, when you're a little child, you always dream of, being alone and you can do whatever you want. And this is like kind of my few days where my inner child does whatever it wants, like eat the food you want, like do like when you're a child, it sucks because you never have money, you can't do anything. Your
Hmm.
parents are telling you what to do, and now I have my little childhood dream fulfilled.
Well, enjoy it. I mean, if it's a dream come true, man, act like it, right?
Yeah. Definitely. So I will enjoy my great food now. I actually ordered chicken salad. Wow, it's probably going to be awesome.
There you go.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to Spaces on Friday, and I hope you will have a great week, man.
Absolutely, brother. You too. And we will talk very soon. Take care.
Bye bye.